Lindbergh School District.
Can everyone hear me okay? Or do
Better use that.
you want me to use this? All right. Yeah. Okay. So thanks for having me here today. My name is David Randleman, and I wanted to give you a little bit of a presentation today, a little bit of a testimonial on how we got here, why we're running for Lindbergh Schools, how important it is to us. And the theme is really the fall, the fight to restore it, and the hope. So this is not all doom and gloom. I'm hoping to install some hope as well. So very briefly, a little bit about myself and my wife, Maki here. We are originally from Israel. I was born and raised there, for those who don't know, and born to Jewish American parents. That's why I still have good English. And we really settled over there, and at some point I worked for a company that got acquired by a company here in St. Louis, and they offered to relocate the whole family here when they decided to close shop in Israel. So we prayed about it, we thought about it, and the truth was I had really a strong love and for the American people, and I really wanted to come out here and not only live here and experience the American dream, but also serve, and that's the truth. And so we left everything behind. We started our new life here, and we specifically looked for a good school district that we could begin. Our children did not have English. They would have to be taught from scratch. So we looked, and the best school district in our region was, no question, Lindbergh Schools. They had the best English language learners. They had the consistency of high academics in every one of their school buildings. They had great leadership. Everything about it was just fascinating. I mean, we were welcomed, and this was 2012. We were welcomed, and we felt just part of the community almost instantly. And our children, we have four. Our two oldest ones are alum now. They had the most wonderful experience at Lindbergh. And that's a little bit of my background. And really our story, and what I'm going to be sharing with you, is what I feel a story of many. It's not unique to us, but I'm going to be sharing it as a testimonial. So it was around 2016 or so that we started noticing a change in Lindbergh Schools. This was after our board, our district kind of went through a crisis, really. The teachers were not getting paid enough. They were able to rally the community around them. They wanted NEA-endorsed board members to be there. And I understand where they were coming from. I have thoughts on maybe the administration kind of climbed too high on their demands and from the teachers. And so the board started getting very political. And the board got taken over, and one of the unexpected outcomes is really a shift in the academics. Completely overhauled the curriculum and what children are being taught, and we started seeing cracks in the academic excellence that we had until that time. So we then started noticing ideological changes too. So there was a lot of talk about putting equity in the school district, and I'll kind of get into how that manifested itself. But you've all heard of DEI, and I think the problem with DEI and the way it's implemented is there's a lot of beautiful, good words in there, positive words. And so inclusion, well, we were included in the school district. That's a very positive thing. But there's also this equity component in there. And I'll get to why that's hurting the academics shortly. So we started receiving letters from the administration, and we started having our equity night, and it was really about re-educating specifically white students, and this was after all the Ferguson situation, and I understand there was great concern about what was going on, and we'll get into this a little bit more. So, academics. I know this graph doesn't really show clearly, but this here is Lindbergh Schools. I think this is from the last year. Their academic performance. This is our state. We're still doing better than the state. But compared to our neighbors and our Rockwood, Ladue, we're about 10 points behind. And we used to be number 1 in the entire state. So there's no question we've fallen. Just to explain what this is below this is below basic. This is failing, and then there's basic. Basic doesn't mean passing, although my opponents keep saying that means passing, and they're counting. This is how many kids are proficient in their grade level. What basic is, they have some of the masteries required for their grade proficiency, but not all of it. It's like having 50. It's still not passing. Then you have proficient and advanced, okay? And you can see this throughout the grades. So we're a bit above state average, that's not a great testament. And we're kind of happy with that from a district perspective. Our board members are happy with that. Our superintendent is happy with that. I'm not. So let's talk a little bit about DEI and what was taught to the students. So as you can see, this was actually given in the Lindbergh classroom and introducing children into DEI. I want us to take a look, and I want us to quickly analyze this, what it's actually saying. So equality is depicted as sort of cruel and unfair of treating students. Why? Well, you have this fence here, and there's like a concert going on there in the background. This kid here isn't able to participate in that. This kid is sort of somewhat, and only one kid is getting the full view of what's happening. So that's how equality is presented to students. Okay? And then you have equity. And equity is sort of shown, this is the correction. This is the making the outcome equal. No one's asking, well, where are they getting these blocks from? Are they taking it from someone else? How's it suddenly appearing there? But this is how, again, it's presented to the students. But then they take it a step further, and they say, here's justice, just break down that fence. It shouldn't even be there. Right? What is that telling kids? Have you wondered why our universities are becoming so violent in the protests? Well, this is where it starts. This is the indoctrination that we keep referring to. It was important for me to show you actual examples that appeared in Lindbergh Schools, and it's not unique to Lindbergh Schools, that I need people to understand. And then finally, liberation. No offense at all, anarchy. That's how I call it. So this is what the students are being taught. These are my children, my 2 younger ones. Yes, Chris.
On that other previous slide, what I think is funny is the kid in yellow suddenly grew up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so that happens too? I mean, that's ridiculous.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's interesting.
They give them vitamins or something.
I guess now they're equal outcome, even in their growth. So these are my younger kids, my 2 younger ones, Mariah and Dror. And I want to tell you a story that happened to us and why I had to pull them out of Lindbergh Schools. And it was one of the most painful and sad things. So we spoke about the academics, but my daughter, and I think the world of her, she's so sweet and innocent. She started coming home, and she was 7 at the time, and she was telling me, Dad, we learned about a mommy marrying a mommy and these different things, and I had to have a conversation with her at 7. And I had to explain to her, Mariah, you know, there are people out there that they believe that that's the way they want to live their life, but that's not our values. And I have to ask, why do I even have to explain the difference in values? Why is the school even teaching and normalizing values that are different than, you know, just teach the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. Can we agree on that?
Yeah.
So I tried communicating with the school district. I spoke to the administration at length. I even joined their DEI committee as a conservative voice to try to speak reason. And the final effort was, let's talk to the principal. There were books in the classroom normalizing the things I had mentioned. I thought, well, if maybe I can just secure the classroom for her, that would make things better. So we met with the principal, and I said, listen, just take these books out of the classroom. There's no way to supervise her. There's no way to opt her out of reading these books, and she loves books. Just leave it in the library. I'll opt my child out of the school library. That's on me. And his response was very honest and shocking, and he said, if I do that, what will the LGBTQ parents say? And my thought was, well, what about the conservative parents? Why are our values lower than the LGBTQ? I mean, shouldn't we all have a place at the table? Can't we find our common denominator? Well, that was the decision to pull the kids out. So, in summary, the values of DEI are more important than my values, and ours here is a collective. I want to share some of these books, and I'm sorry I tried to censor it a little bit, but you need to understand these are the books out of Lindbergh School. We brought them out. They're normalizing this stuff. Is this educational?
So who decided to put those books in?
Oh, this is the librarian's decision. They want to decolonize our library books and fill it with this stuff. They want to normalize.
Censorship.
Well, and then they call us the book banners because we don't want these books in the classroom. There's only so much space. Put it in the public library. But why the schools?
And it shouldn't even be included.
It shouldn't. I'm just saying if you have to compromise. So I just want you to understand, like, what about the families that feel that their values are that this is something that's sacred and holy, and maybe it should be in a marriage, right? And not normalizing this stuff.
David?
Yes.
Yeah. What age is the children getting these books?
This book probably around the middle school, but even in lower classes, you're going to see some of this stuff.
God. David, those illustrations that you just had there, now, were these just books that were in the library, or were they given out to each and every student?
Well, they were not. They were in the library, but they were also in the classrooms. The teachers could bring them into the classrooms.
For each student?
No, not for each student.
Oh, okay.
Just in general.
Oh.
They weren't like pushed forcefully on students, but they were there, and the libraries were promoting them. So you know how a lot of times you have books in the front? So that's what was happening. So again, this is our testimony of what was happening. So obviously we were concerned. Next step we did is we started talking to people. At the time, a dear friend of mine, and I'm sure of many here, Mike Tishless, he was a board member at Lindbergh Schools, the last conservative board member I'm aware of, and he helped bring us together because he was hearing from multiple sources. We formed a conservative group called PAIR, Parents Against Intolerance and Radicalism. So this isn't unique to Lindbergh. This was happening all over the state and nation. Parents just sort of banding together and trying to see if we can make a difference. You probably have seen at board meetings, parents trying to share these books or read them out to shame the board, and the board either get mad and shut them out, or, well, that was happening at Lindbergh Schools as well. So, let's see. Yeah, so we also started running for, that was when I tried to run for the board too, and that was my first face-to-face with the NEA power and hold on our board. So year one was a lot of learning when I ran. I ran with Carrie Clay, and it was amazing how much money they spent to defeat us. We're just grassroots, community supported. There was nothing, beyond that. We were doing our best. We came about 5 points short from getting a seat. It was pretty close that time. Year two, so this is my fourth time. But every year we learn lessons and refine things. So we've improved our platform. We continue to keep our district accountable even as candidates. We found FERPA violations. That's a federal law protecting pupil privacy. And so we dealt with the district. They had to self-report themselves as a result. We continued with the books. Thankfully, the legislator at this point intervened a little bit. Some of these books were limited in the school, not all of them. Let's see, what else here? Oh yeah, so I want to talk about decolonizing. So while they were projecting on us as book banners, even though we were not able to take a single book out of the school district, but we were called book banners. In the meantime, our school district removed any book that they felt projected a white savior, okay, or anywhere where they felt that it was a stereotype. They got so into the politically correct that if a Native American was referred to Indian in a book, it was removed, even if it was a great book. You will not find any Mark Twain books in our school library. You can go online and try to search for it. You won't find anything.
He's from our state, Mark Twain.
I know. Well, and there's a lot of examples. I don't know where the TV remote is, but I wanted to show you an example. Yeah, thank you. I wanted to show you an example hopefully this works well enough. But here's an example of our head librarian deciding to remove books.
And then this one, Amelia Bedelia Talks Turkey, looking further and being mindful of what stereotypes we're promoting in literature. This one I removed because it has a very negative stereotype of indigenous people at Thanksgiving time. So I don't want this in the library anymore, and I'm going to remove it.
This was the controversial word was Indian, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, here's the thing. I have an Indian motorcycle. And let me tell you, I love the logo. I think it's a noble motorcycle showing the ideals of a noble people. Why not appreciate them? They call themselves Indian, typically. Okay, anti-Semitism. I want to touch on this. This hits close to home. And there is anti-Semitism that has been forming, and this is part of the oppressed, the whole thing that's happening is also causing students to look at conflicts around that world in that lens. So Israel is depicted as a colonizer. It doesn't belong in Israel, and therefore the Palestinian people are justified to do whatever they need to do to get rid of the oppressor. Everything is justified, and so that's the sentiment that students have. Now, a personal story that happened to us. The teacher got to the history class teaching about the Middle East, and when she got to Israel, she decided to really summarize that whole lesson by giving them some BBC news articles showing them the IDF blowing up different things in Gaza, and didn't show any context or other perspectives. That was the history lesson. And then she asked the students a guided question: what do you feel about Israel? What do you think most of the students said? They're terrible. They're blowing up the Palestinians. No history. How about objective history? Don't be biased. Give objective history. And she didn't know that Roniel, my older daughter, was originally born in Israel, and she felt a connection to the place, and she's there now. And she came home crying and broken, and she was bullied too. And I tried to reach out to that teacher. I said, listen, why don't you let me tell you a little bit about how life was in Israel. I am willing to share with you, and I won't get into politics. I'm just going to tell you how it was for me growing up there. And let me tell you, the Arabs are not our enemy. It's Hamas. It's the ideology that's our enemy, not the people. We got along well with the Arabs. And I enjoyed the language. I enjoyed the culture. So this is not about, a lot of us, by the way, Israel has 20% of the population are Arab Israeli. They're supreme justice, they're doctors, they're integrated in Israeli society. No one seems to realize that when they talk about Israel. So she refused. She didn't want me to talk about Israel. She wanted to keep her narrative. And we saw other things happening. My son's profile, my oldest, was switched to a swastika. When I tried to deal with the district and say, listen, can you deal with this? At least that child, I'm not looking for a punishment, but that kid needs to be told the significance of what they are doing. No, they just switched the profile back, the admin, and then they quieted it down. They didn't want trouble. My daughter was called a Zio. Do you know what Zio means?
No.
It's a derogatory way of calling a person a Zionist. What is Zionism? Zionism is the Jewish self-determination. It's a biblical word too. Talking about God's kingdom, Israel's kingdom. So it's now a derogatory thing and kids use it. And if you look at the universities, Zionism is the big thing they hate. They're taught, right? That's what they're taught. So I just want to show you the connection. It starts in schools. It starts with ignorance. We're repeating history. We're demonizing the Jewish people. I think that needs to change. I'm not looking to put any propaganda, but let's start with objective history. Let's tell the whole context, right? And let the students make education decisions based on their values. So that was year 2. Year 3, I had David Kirshner join last year. David Kirshner was an incredible candidate. Excuse me. And he was a former geology professor from SLU. Let me tell you, if there was a person with good intent, a person who was who could have been an excellent board member, a better candidate than myself, that was David Kirshner. You should have seen what lengths they went to destroy him. I mean, I'll show you. They came up with these websites and these articles and hit pieces in the Riverview Front Times or whatever it's called.
That's not in. They don't even publish that anymore.
Well, yeah, we felt that was karma when we saw that it was closing down. But you have to understand, they really were afraid of him winning. And this was just a guy who had a good heart. His whole life was education. He believed in public education. It lifted his family out of poverty. Yes?
Yeah, wasn't it true that that Kirshner was actually teaching remedial math for incoming freshmen at the school?
Maybe, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Well, so I just want to touch on this. Well, I'll show you some of the stuff. Like, here's an example, and this is where I really discovered how deep the school district, its employees, which are activists, are deeply involved in meddling in the elections. And I came out with video series showing this. Okay? And yes, I definitely point the finger at the school district and the unions for operating in such a way with all the whisper campaigns and the hit pieces. This was from the Riverfront Times. They tried to insinuate we were getting dark money and we want to destroy the public education, and it's really, really weird. Take a look at this. I had made a comment about I think it was the Oklahoma superintendent on Twitter, that he said he wanted just to go back to patriotic history. And I agreed with him, right? I wrote, this is how you teach American history. That's the only thing I agreed with them on. And they created this whole insinuation, I am responsible, I am hateful, approves of Ryan Walters' approach. I mean, this is propaganda. And this was done by activists in our school district. So, year 4, we decided to change our strategy. We decided that we need to just face the school district straight on and bring light and shine with the experience we have. Shine back at the school district. Call out those activist employees. They're hurting the community. Call out the policies of equity which have lowered our academic standards. Say it like we've experienced it firsthand. I mean, you have to understand, I love the school district. I'm trying to save it. Because if we keep going down this path of mediocrity, here's what's going to happen. Our birth rates are stagnating. In about 10 years or less, school districts are going to start having population collapse. This is a demographic certainty. And St. Louis isn't attracting a whole lot of people to move here.
No.
So, how do we keep our school district strong and viable? We have to have the best academics, like we used to. The reason we moved here. And that's what we're trying to accomplish here. Let's get rid of the politics. So hope. Not ashamed to say, I pray a lot and I seek wisdom from God. In fact, part of what God showed me, put on my heart, is to have a heart like Jeremiah the prophet. So many people out there decided, well, he lost, loser, right? But it wasn't for me about winning or losing, it was about shining a light. Yes, sir?
Yeah, just a question. The little tabloid paper that's mailed out, it's called a call. Have you experienced fairness in that? Any fairness in that thing, or just neutrality?
Well,
how would you describe it?
So they were pretty okay with me. I think they were pretty fair, except last year. They had Aaron.
Stay away from the call.
Yeah.
And over there, I had an argument with them where they took out sentences that I put in, and they made it look completely different. And then they decided but they structured it so it looked like something totally different. And when I called them out on it, I said, well, maybe next time I'll just tell my fellow conservative candidates not to work with the call. The response I got was, how dare you put a veiled threat on a local newspaper doing their journalistic duty? And I said, there's nothing veiled about it.
It's not local.
But Erin, whatever her name was, left, and I decided to give it an opportunity. And look, we do need our local newspapers, but with the stuff that's going on, and I'll get to the taxes in a moment, and Russ, you said this should be an opportunity for journalists to make their name. There's so much stuff out there that they could expose and bring forth to the community, but instead it's all rah, everything's great. So,
Question.
yes.
How many people are pulling their kids out? I mean, is there really a decline because people are
There is. So there is a decline in the school, and I have a back and forth about that because the way they count students is different than the way DESE counts the students, the Department of Secondary Education. So if you look at DESE, they were going up, and I also look at the demographic studies, and they were supposed to be about 8,000 students. Even according to Lindbergh Schools, I think they say they have like 7,400 or something like that, but they have actually more like 7,200, and the reason is, first of all, they're counting their new daycare, which they opened up as students. And they're also counting students who are partially enrolled as in their count. And I think DESE has a standard where you have to have at least 85 or something % participation to be considered a fully enrolled student. And what we found recently is that about 500 students every day are missing in the school. So on average, their attendance rates are hurting their numbers, but in general, we are short no matter how you look at the numbers. So I'm trying to be fair and give you the full picture. But yes, absolutely, their decline is because, by the way, private schools are bursting in the seams.
Yeah.
That's, okay, so whoever can afford it takes their kids to private schools, myself included. But let me ask you this, how is this helping our community? And we're actually creating classes because the public schools aren't performing, so those who can afford to send to private schools, they're going to come out great. But the public schools are not, and that's just too bad. So, the letter to the AG, I want to talk about that because that was used against me last year. But are you aware of the Attorney General letter to Lindbergh Schools, the cease and desist? So there was a letter that came out last year, our Attorney General Bailey, demanding from our school district to stop their affirmative action, the race-based discrimination in our gifted program. And the school district immediately said, we're not doing that. And then they blamed me because someone did a sunshine. They knew who to sunshine. And they found out that I was the one who opened the complaint. Because I tried to work with the school district, they denied it with me, it's on public record. And so what did I have left to do except go to our Attorney General? But that was used against me too, even though I was asking them to stop racial discrimination. Is that so terrible?
No.
It was to them. So what's next? And I don't know, how am I doing on time?
You've got, we're cutting it close. You've got about 5 more minutes.
Okay, I can wrap this up in 5 minutes. I won't have too much time to talk about the taxes. But I did want to talk about this year. So Russ, Damer, and Hank for Plank joined as a sort of conservative front to our progressive incumbents. And I know Hank would say this himself, but there's 2 seats available. Please vote for me and Russ. We just wanted a majority candidate so we could demand to have things like the pledge in our forum, which we were able to get. Again, that's a funny story, but different time. So we've been breaking down the lies of the district and breaking down their narratives. We've really been attacking their no-race tax, Prop R, and bringing light to what's been happening there. And we have a video series on my website where I really get into that and I break it down. QR code's there if you want to scan it. I'm going to briefly go over our taxes. So, very, very quickly. You'll hear from the school, you'll see it even probably in the link. Our school district claims to have the lowest state minimum tax possible at $2.75. What they're not telling you is we also have a debt levy of 83 cents per $100 assessed, and that we are carrying, let me see, we're carrying 2 Prop Rs that we're only paying the interest on. We haven't started paying the principal, and in order to pay it back, we have to have 6% assessment increases between now and 2040 to eventually pay it back. We're only paying it back sort of the last 5 years. That's $240 million just from this last prop. The total debt we'll be paying off by 2045 is going to be $500 million. Every household in this Lindbergh Schools district will be paying an extra $13,000 by 2045 just to finance the debt. Is that still a no-raise tax? I ask? Well, if values dip in our assessments, what happened? Well, the district will raise our debt levy. They're allowed to do it because we've approved the Prop R.
Hey, quick,
Yeah.
what are the two prop bars? What years were the?
Yes. 2019 was our Prop R for the high school. That was for about 125 million. It ended up going a little over budget, about 140 million. We still haven't paid the principal off on that. And then the second one is 150 million, which we're going to be financing with $90 million in interest. And just to give you...
That's 2024?
This is the 24 one.
Yeah.
And just so you understand, we're still carrying other props and capital projects like the central office on Sappington Road. Anyway, we haven't even paid that one back yet. So we're carrying a lot of debt. What's going to be with our kids, right? I mean, we have to think about the future here. Russ?
Two more questions. What about the road property? How much did that cost? And what about the Concrete Farmers Club? How much did that cost?
Actually, I don't know the exact sum. Got me there.
Well, what are they doing with those properties?
I know, the Farmers Club, they're planning on opening some, what was it again, like an agriculture center, yes. And it's one thing to want to do that, but how many farmers do we have here in St. Louis? And the other thing I'm worried about is we're going to have to staff that too. So it's digging into our operational budget. And I don't think we really have reserves. So what do we need? We need fiscally responsible leadership. We will need eventually to have to start looking forward and thinking of consolidating our buildings because I do anticipate an enrollment drop. And the sooner we can start planning for removing debt, I think the better. Prioritize academics and renovations over new buildings. Like, okay, new buildings, great. That's been the shiny thing that's attracted parents. But it's time to bring back the academics. I do think we need to sell some of our assets. I don't think we need the Farmers Club, like I said, to pay debt sooner. So with community effort, prayers, and persistence, we do have a window right now, especially with the wave of change in our nation and kind of the realization that a lot of the DEI programs are not working. And I want to emphasize this. It's not that we're talking about removing the inclusiveness. It's not that we're going to treat students different. It's just to remove the Marxist idea of equity of outcome. Yes.
Yeah, David, have we reached at this point for students zero population growth? Have we reached at that point yet? Or how close are we if we haven't?
We're about 5 years from stagnation. Well, we are already in stagnation to some degree, but about 5 years' time. Yes, sir.
It's an observation. I've lived in Crestwood for almost 40 years, and we have a turnover, of course, going on from the older retired people, which I'm soon to join, to the house turning over to the next generation who have young kids.
Yes.
And we've had 8 turnovers in our neighborhood in the last 2 years. And we take not deliberate efforts, but just kind of side conversations. But what promoted you to live here? For a while, it was Crestwood was the lowest taxes. That's no longer true.
Yeah,
The second persistence that we hear, and we still hear it even today with some new ones that just moved in a few weeks ago. We moved here because of the reputation of Lindbergh Schools.
Yes, that's why I moved here.
And when I asked, what do you mean by reputation and where did you hear it? There's silence. It's this invisible message that's being getting out. Do you know where that's coming from?
Well, because we were a good school district. And
That's
look,
not the reality now.
here's the thing. We can do better, right? We can go back to those
We
days.
need to close it out.
Not for being.
So, when you meet voters in the district, what are the top 2 or 3 issues that they care about?
Well, the number one issue from this last year was the cost of living. and I shared this story, I share it often, but one of the most heartbreaking stories, and I'm wrapping up,
We
is...
still have to have our meeting yet.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so last quick story, and I'll wrap up. I met a gentleman who had just retired a few months ago, and he planned his whole pension that he would have about $800 reserved. And this is when Biden inflation was going on, and everything was getting expensive, and assessments were going up. And he said, "Look, can you do something if you get on the board? My taxes are killing me. My $800 reserve are being eaten into, and I'm going to have to probably move out of the district." And this is a person who described himself as working his whole life in the trade and finally can retire. He owns his home. He finally has some time to do something, and now he's being driven out. When I brought this to the district, the attitude was sort of, yeah, he should sell. A younger family should come in with kids. And I thought that was just terrible and heartbreaking. So that's probably the number one. And number two is people are concerned about the academics and the stuff going on in schools. But I don't think they realize how deep it goes. So I'll end with that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Thank you. David always does a fantastic job at letting us know what's going on at Lindbergh School District and what's going on with our kids. Lindbergh is not alone. We're seeing the same thing at many different school districts.